So earlier today, Chris put up his status symbol post for the Palm 5. Incredible PDA from 1998, incredible design. And it got me thinking about my handspring visor prism, this big, chunky, thick PDA, no internet built in unless you put in a module on the back. And then, I put up a picture of it next to the iPhone 5 and just how much thinner and better it is. And I mean, I'm going to be honest, we're going to talk about specs today. And it's easy to get grumpy and complain that, these are just small iterative bumps day by day, week by week, month by month. But over the course of years, you just miss that we're living in the goddamn future. It's kind of amazing. And we're going to try and give it the appropriate awe today. Stay tuned for the Verge Mobile Show. Hi, I'm Dieter Bone.
I'm Dan Seifert.
I'm Vlad Savo.
And I'm Chris Stigler.
We don't have our process down for the order on when we go 4 up. We have the whole team.
I was
here.
just
It's
thinking
amazing.
about that.
Yeah, I was thinking about it. Well, the whole time we were sitting here in silence waiting to start. I'm like, this is gonna be a
I'm always last. That's all you guys need to know.
I'll take the fall on
yeah,
this one.
pretty
I think it's my fault because we should probably just go in alphabetical order, and I was supposed to wait for
could just go
Vlad.
now.
So
Alphabetical, my last name, of course.
right.
So it is really hot in San Francisco, and I'm just going to start off with the off-topic madness. It's October, and I'm a sweaty mess, and I had to walk and buy a fan for the office, and it just hasn't helped. It's uncomfortable, and I'm unhappy, and I'm grumpy, and so even though I'm all optimistic in our opening, the truth is I'm really angry and unhappy. Except my sister just had a baby, which is pretty
Yay.
cool.
Congratulations.
I'm an uncle. Yeah, I didn't contribute at all because that would be gross.
Yeah, that would be weird if you didn't. So do they not have air conditioning in San Francisco?
Not in my building. There is a 25-year-old window air conditioner sitting in a closet, but I don't know if I have permission to take it and use it. But I might just have to do that. Our landlord. I shouldn't say anything. Our landlord's a little bit persnickety, and so I can't do anything until I actually talk to her about it.
Well, meanwhile, your regular San Francisco weather has made its way to New York because it's 60 degrees and raining out. So
I would totally take that right now. I'm not used to heat. I just can't handle it.
I'm
should move on.
actually
Can't
looking
handle
up.
the heat.
It's been a long time since we've had a mobile show where I haven't known a word, and I've had to look it up live on the air, but I'm doing that right now with persnickety. Placing too much emphasis on
Persnickety?
trivial or minor details.
Yeah. Actually, here's the thing. Have you guys ever heard the phrase "somebody's going to have a bird"?
no,
No.
I've
That's
heard
something
put a
that,
bird
my
on
family
it.
has always said. It's like having a conniption fit. You're going to have a bird. So I was going to say that my landlord would have a bird if we just took the air conditioner, but
Persnickety
No
was
one
not
would
a
know what
choice.
that meant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
By the way, fun fact: a synonym of persnickety is pernickety with no S.
Oh, come on.
pernickety is not a
I'm
word.
so sure one of those versions of the word is American.
But you don't know
Right.
which one?
I don't know. It's like aluminum and aluminium and flammable and inflammable. I'm sure inflammable was never meant to be, or maybe, well, I don't know. I don't know which one was meant to be, or which one was meant to mean flammable. I presume it's just flammable. And then some Americans decided, actually, inflammable sounds like it catches flame. So we'll use it for the exact same meaning, even though it sounds like it's the exact opposite one. Which I don't know what the exact opposite of the Verge Mobile Show is, but I think we've been doing it since the start today.
I don't even. It's so nice to have everybody in the same 4-up box and just have us all together. I don't even want to talk about phones. I just want to talk about the fact that everybody has a beard except for Dan, and he really needs to get on that.
I know. I actually didn't shave today. So give me a few more weeks.
Okay. All right, fair enough.
Yeah, Dan, when Dieter came here, he didn't have a beard, and he claimed that he was unable to grow one, and now he has one of the most luscious beards on the team.
Well,
So,
I want to say
I don't
this.
know that I would call it luscious.
My first week here, I had a pretty rockin' beard, and if you watch the first 90 seconds I was in, like back in August, my beard was, in full force, and then I was like, you know what, I might be on camera more often. The beard's got to go, and so I've been beard free.
Yeah, the beard's
then,
got to
so.
stay, my friend. The beard's got to stay.
No, my beard is basically like hair that meant to grow on my arm and just missed, and it hit my face. It's not luscious at all. We gotta talk about.
We have yet to talk about any phones. I think we've been on the air for like 5 or 10 minutes now, and we have yet to mention a phone.
So the big news has
admittedly,
got to be
let's-
HTC, right?
Yeah. Okay. We'll talk about the on-topic stuff. I'll quickly introduce the HTC One X Plus, which is so bonkers, is so unique that only somebody who's had the opportunity to see it and touch it in person, such as myself, can really speak about it. I mean, honestly, it is such a special phone. Such a special phone. And the sarcasm needs to end. HTC just upgraded the One X and gave it a faster processor, a bigger battery, more storage, and called it the One X Plus. And it's shipping it with Jelly Bean. All of it is actually good news. I'm just kind of underwhelmed with these iterative upgrades. And I don't think I'm alone here. And the most notable thing you can really say about the One X Plus is that it has a more matte surface than the white One X. And it only comes in black. So if you really wanted a dark matte black One X, it's here. And I mean, I do appreciate the fact that it has a new bigger battery. That's good. And Jelly Bean. What isn't good, and the thing that actually annoys me, is that HTC is going to ship this phone, sell this phone across Europe before it ships out the Jelly Bean update for the One X and the One S. Not long before, but it's still before. And that's just a bad habit.
Yeah. So my concern, I'm really glad that it has the bigger battery, but it also has it switches to, it's a 1.7 gigahertz Tegra 3. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah, and one of the things I loved about the One X is on AT&T with LTE is it's got really good battery life, and a big fan of that Qualcomm processor. So I'm a little bit concerned that switching to the Tegra is going to offset that bigger battery, and it'll basically be a wash in terms of longevity and battery life on this thing.
No, I mean, that's a very real concern. I've been using the Tegra 3 based One X, and its battery life is decent, but it's not great. I believe it was Chris who reviewed both the One X and the AT&T One X, and he freaked out when he saw the AT&T one with the extra efficiency from the latest S4 processor from Qualcomm. So yeah, I mean, to me it's a loss. And also, AT&T announced its version of the One X, which is going to be released in the coming months. So it seems to be a bit later than Europe, and it's actually going to come with this new Tegra 3 processor and LTE. So this is going to be the first, I believe, the first Tegra 3 and LTE phone. But I think I'm with you, Dieter. I would much rather have the dual-core Snapdragon instead of Tegra 3.
I mean, the other thing is, has the problem with the One X been the specs? I mean, we know that, pretty happy with the device. It just hasn't done as well as, HTC was expecting, and not as well as I was expecting. I mean, this will help push things along a little bit. And I guess it's good that they're sort of sticking with their plan to keep the One series consistent. But it's just sort of like, would they really have hurt them that much to not release this phone? Honestly, is this phone going to help them that much?
It's funny that you mentioned that, Dieter, because I was thinking supposedly 2012 is supposed to be like a new HTC with fewer devices and a different HTC than we've seen in the past, and so far that's been the case. But this device kind of feels like last year's HTC when we saw like the Sensation come to the market, and then that phone that came out like 3 months after the Sensation with a slightly faster processor, which is totally escaping my mind right now, but it came out for T-Mobile.
Sensation XE.
Yeah, the XE and the whatever the T-Mobile had branded it. Amaze, the Amaze 4G. It was like virtually the same phone as a Sensation, but it had a faster processor, which just feels just exactly the same as that. And like you were saying, it's hard to say that this will do anything for HTC. It's still going to be limited to AT&T, just like the One X was here in the US. And it's It's nicer that it has the more storage, because it's got the 64 gigabytes of internal storage as opposed to 16. But in this day and age, a lot of people are dumping stuff in the cloud, and 16 isn't really a problem for the average user, I don't think. So I kind of agree with you. It's hard to see how this is going to be really beneficial for HTC. Anybody else?
What are you? What are you up to, Chris? And what are your thoughts on this One X?
So I have to confess, I think that my internet connection is causing me to inject just enough of a delay so that it's impossible for me to actually speak during the course of a normal conversation in this grand HTC debate. But now that you specifically called me out, I will. I do have a couple of thoughts on this thing. I think that the X Plus, I kind of think of the X Plus as being, it's exactly like you guys were saying. I think of it very similarly to the jump from, say, the iPhone 4 to the 4S. The difference is that instead of turning that product around in a year, they're trying to turn it around in 4 or 5 months, and that is not. I think that that's a very, very difficult habit for Android manufacturers, HTC and Samsung included, to break. Samsung has done a better job, and I don't think that we'll see. There were those rumors going around recently that we'd see a GS4 at MWC next year. I don't think that's going to be the case. I don't think we'll see that until June or July. So maybe it was a carrier request, and that's another problem for HTC, is that they're still beholden to companies like AT&T and Verizon. When they want something, it's probably very difficult for them to say, no, we're going to do this our way. And they've certainly tried with the 1 series. But speaking of these announcements today, let's talk about the VX, which is an AT&T exclusive device. And so here's another example, just like the Droid Incredible 4G LTE, of a carrier bespoke product that does not really line up anywhere in the grand scheme of HTC's product portfolio, apart from the fact that it shares the one name. And the specs are weird. The processor's good. It's got the dual core. It's got a 1.2 gigahertz dual core Snapdragon S4, which is a great processor, and we've done nothing but praise it all year long. But 4.5-inch QHD is just a weird size resolution combination. And add in the fact that they're not discontinuing the One X on AT&T. Where the heck did these 3 products line up? Because AT&T is already selling the One X for $99.99. And in talking to HTC earlier about these phones, I got the impression that they're not necessarily keen on lowering that price again in time for the holidays. So you're going to have the X Plus presumably at $199.99, I would imagine. Then you'll have the One X at $99.99, and then the VX is where? $49.99 free? I just it's another price pressure situation. We've been talking about this problem for years, but it's happening once again, where you've got too many products in too small of a price range, I think.
The thing about the VX for me is, why did they change the design? That was the one thing everybody said about the 1V, is it looks and feels amazing. They must be aiming for a lower price point with this thing.
Well, this is totally different than the 1V. If you compare the 1V is like a 3.7-inch display versus this has got a 4.5-inch display, which is a totally different feel and I think target and market. But though I do feel exactly the same way as you, Dieter. The 1V's design was great, and it was a great entry level 1 series. So if they're going to just do a spec upgrade on the 1X, why not just do a internal spec upgrade on the 1V and then keep that in its entry level slot? But doesn't look like that's in AT&T's plans.
Yeah,
it's true. The thing that I was going to ask actually is if the 1V is available on AT&T. I don't believe that it is.
It is not. No.
Right?
No,
it's not. Okay,
right.
So this 1VX is going to occupy, I guess, that sort of position in HTC's portfolio, such as it is. And I'm guessing in terms of the display, they're kind of dredging up old supply, which is going to be, going really cheap of the old displays of the class and kind, not of the same type and resolution as we had in the HTC Titan and the Sensation I think it was the Sensation XC was the jumbo size one, the 4.7-inch one. So yeah, I think the VX is HTC just being a little bit cynical and just taking, cheap supply that it has, particularly of the displays. And the other thing is, nowadays, as much as we don't like this trend, you can sell a 4.5-inch phone more easily than you can sell a 3.7-inch phone or 4-inch phone, just because people seem to think they get more for their money.
Right.
Well, I guess we should also talk about, so Jelly Bean is coming to the One X and the One S. It's going to start rolling out this month, although as Vlad said, probably after the release of the X Plus and the VX. Man, I hate these names. Anyway, and I mean, I'll be interested to see how HTC handles it, because we know that their take on Ice Cream Sandwich, they very heavily skinned it down to a custom kernel, made it really hard for ROM developers at least to start, especially with the two processors that they had. So I'll be hoping that it's very buttery and very fast, because if it's not, I think that it kind of sucks for Android in a weird way, that if the big effort, the big important stuff that were part of Jelly Bean doesn't translate to these other OEMs, these other skins, that just sucks. So all that'll be there is Google Now, which is cool, but it doesn't feel like a point upgrade to me, a big upgrade.
Yeah.
This is nothing more to say. It's just a really underwhelming phone and a really underwhelming upgrade, I think. And also, there's something here to also mention. Although this isn't a substantive point, there is the matter of the perception of your phones. And HTC has been a premier Android phone manufacturer for a long time. And making the premier devices involves treating them in that fashion. So exactly as Chris was saying, the Samsung Galaxy S3, in spite of Samsung coming out with a ton of mid-range phones, the Galaxy Note phones and upgrades and whatever else, it's not going to be touched. Like the smartphone flagship for Samsung is the Galaxy S3, which will probably last at least until June next year. Whereas HTC is just taking his best phone and just upgrading it kind of randomly. Like, here's the One X, it's our favorite phone. It has two processors, like Dieter just mentioned. And then here's the One XL. It's the same thing, but it has LTE now. And then now here's the One X Plus. We've tweaked it a little bit more. So these things, first of all, they reduce the resale value of the One X because it's not a unique phone. And people who go in to buy a One X don't really know exactly which version they're going to get now. And secondly, because you dilute it, first of all, second of all, I'm kind of repeating myself, but yeah, because you dilute the whole message of the one phone, which was HTC's own creation, you're going against your own marketing, and that same thing that HTC is trying to create, that same emotional bond and connection for people, isn't going to happen if you're going to tweak the formula every few months, even if it's otherwise harmless. So it's just not great news. Could have been great, maybe. Could have been redesigned. Like, okay, I'll say something really positive, or something positive, which is that it has a 2100 milliamp hour battery in the exact same space and shell as the 1800 milliamp hour battery and phone, which HTC deserves credit for. Like, they just jacked in a battery that's a sixth bigger without altering the device size. Just 5 grams heavier, which is good engineering. That's good job by HTC.
Yeah,
and the screen is still fantastic.
Well, I'm gonna challenge you a little bit on this being an underwhelming phone, Vlad. I think the problem. I mean, you said underwhelming phone, underwhelming upgrade, and I totally agree with you on the underwhelming upgrade part. The problem is that I think the problem for HTC and for the Android business in general is that the One X did not need an upgrade this year, and this makes, I think that the existence of the X Plus makes HTC look a little weak. And it makes them look like they're trying to get some sort of leg up on the GS3. Like, they feel like they're in a defensive position, and they need to kind of like rejigger the One X just a little bit to get a leg up and try and get back in carrier stores, which maybe they very well need to do. But still, from a public perception perspective, that's not necessarily the image that they want to project.
Absolutely. And also, just to mention, the Samsung Galaxy Note 2 just started. Well, it's on sale now here in the UK and obviously other markets. I think it's already on sale in Korea. So, from my thinking, I just see HTC seeing the Galaxy Note 2 grabbing a whole load of shelf space in carrier stores, exactly as you're saying, Chris. And they're saying, we need to get something big to sit alongside it. We can't just let Samsung have this big new product, particularly is Samsung's first shipping Jelly Bean device as well. So HTC decided to counter that, but again, the problem is that Samsung's Note series is separate from its flagship, whereas for HTC, this quote-unquote upgrade is to its actual flagship device.
Mm-hmm.
And for what it's worth, here in the US, it's still going to be on one carrier, and it's not going to get the exposure on multiple carriers like, say, the Galaxy S3 has.
Right.
And that's not good news.
Speaking of rudderless, directionless, defensive actions while retreating, Open webOS has been released in its official 1.0 form.
Yay!
Yeah, so it's out, and you can install it on a computer. There's a group called webOS Ports, which is associated with webOS internals. They're kind of, they work together. And they got it running on a Galaxy Nexus. They've been working on it for a while. They still don't have hardware acceleration going on it. And Steve Troughton-Smith actually has also got it running on a Transformer Prime, although I suspect that hardware acceleration might not be going there either. So they really need to get that figured out. And I mean, HP needs to help if they want to get any kind of traction here whatsoever.
Can I just say, I'm unreasonably excited about the Galaxy Nexus port. Like, I don't know why, I can't explain it, but I am extremely excited to try a Galaxy Nexus running Open webOS for no reason whatsoever.
Well, I see it this way. It's the best hardware webOS has ever run on, even though it's, a year-old hardware that wasn't exactly cutting edge at the time when it came out. It's still the best phone that webOS has ever seen because of, the various hardware issues that webOS and Palm had. So that's kind of exciting. The other thing is, what's the end game here? This is going to appeal to webOS diehards and super nerds, but where do they go with it from here?
I mean,
well, I think
the thing that's
to answer your question,
that's
Dan,
interesting to me. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say, I think that they end up having the exact same level of resounding success that Migo and Tizen have had. I think that's.
I mean, part of me wonders if we've just seen the end game. I mean, if you read their post about this thing, reaching 1.0, the thing they keep saying over and over again is, we did what we said we were going to do. We met our goal. They care more about the fact that they managed to stick to their roadmap than they do about the fact that they've just shipped an OS, right? It's more about, the first line is we've succeeded in our goal despite our tiny resources, instead of, hey, look, there's a new OS that you can install. So the community is going to get this up and running. They'll get hardware acceleration going in the Nexus. It'll be a fun thing to try. And I suspect that we're going to maybe see Huawei or ZTE or somebody, take a flyer on a webOS device to sell as a phone. And, we might see, it installed in some kind of corporate environment. But I don't see any evidence that now that this thing is out, that, what's the next part of the roadmap? What's the next step? They need to make some announcements. And I mean, we also need to see how this relates to this weird Graham spinoff company and what they're planning on doing. So, I mean, it's, it'll be a fun experiment, but I really don't expect webOS to return to mattering in the consumer landscape if it ever did.
Well,
right.
Dieter, I would actually like to bring you back to our opener today, which was about status symbols, that post. And funnily enough, it was a Palm device that we're talking about. This is the only Oh, this is actually the pinnacle of what Open webOS can achieve is become sort of status symbol OS with status symbol devices, which geeks will recognize and appreciate and enjoy, primarily because the ecosystem issue, the third-party app ecosystem issue is so prevalent nowadays. If you don't have one, you're pretty much dead in the water. And this is why the guys who are struggling to reach number 3 behind Android and iOS are struggling so hard. Windows Phone and RIM with, the 2015 BlackBerry 10 release, which they've got planned. So it's always the case. I mean, I'm thinking about the guys who left Nokia, the former Nokia engineers, and set up their own project to build more phones on the basis of MeeGo Harmattan, right? I love the Nokia N9. I think most people who used it and got to spend time with it also really enjoyed it. But as much as I love that software, even if they put it on even better hardware, it's not going to go anywhere because there are no apps. You have to have the support of the big guys like Skype and Instagram and etc. You have to have the big social networks. Particularly with Twitter now. I mean, Twitter won't even let you build an app anymore, right? Twitter needs to build its own app.
The other option is to have a real and genuine web app ecosystem where the apps are more than just, a glorified web page and have it be easy to install on multiple devices. I mean, that's a potential future that never came to pass really well. And it would have been great if it had, in my opinion. And I know you're going to rag on me for this, but BlackBerry 10 is pretty good for web apps too. Better, in fact, than webOS really ever was. And
right, I was going to say
that could solve some of these ecosystem problems.
That's the direction that RIM is pushing in. But have we ever seen that succeed? That's the trouble.
No,
we've never seen web
I wish
apps
it would.
succeed on mobile.
Yeah. But I mean, it's frustrating because I ran Pre-Central. I love webOS. And if you've used webOS on a touchpad, it was a slow and buggy experience. But like, you see hiding behind the lag that the potential for really great tablet experience is there. And there's this new Luna CE thing. It's called Luna C for managing Windows that the community's iterating on. So if there just were a decent app ecosystem and they could get this thing running with hardware acceleration on decent hardware, it could be really compelling. But it's it's one of those just frustrating things. Like they're just not killing the dream. And part of me wants HP to just admit that the dream is dead instead of just limping along.
Yeah, I'm with you, actually. I'm with you. I would rather just put a line under it and then we can move on.
What's going to be hilarious to me is when HP makes a Windows Phone or an Android device.
Yeah, that's happening. That's totally happening.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah,
It's
HP is definitely going to make a Windows 8 tablet. Like, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I guess since I brought up BlackBerry, let's just get this out of the way quick. Well, sometime we talked it to death last week, so we don't need to get to BlackBerry 10 again. But they did release their earnings, and they lost less money than people expected. Yay! And 7.4 million smartphone shipped, which is, I guess enough for people not to completely ignore them, but it's still pretty sad.
Well, to put it in perspective, I guess a lot of people were batting this figure around on Twitter. I think Google activates more smartphones in a week than RIM shipped in the quarter.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then we also saw leaked images from looks like a promotional video of, I think it's called the N series is what we're expected to be called, the QWERTY keyboard device with the big square screen. And I mean, I don't know. It looks cool. It's going to be weird to gesture straight up from the keyboard there. If the keyboard is really that close to the screen, having to do that up gesture constantly, I think will be a little bit awkward. But I mean, I'm probably going to buy one of these things.
You are insane. You are literally you should be committed to an institution immediately, Dieter, before this purchase happens.
Listen, when is the last time that there was a front-facing QWERTY keyboard portrait phone with real specs? When was the last time we had that? Well, that was competitive in terms of specs.
Yeah, but operating
I'm thinking
system
it might have been the Trio Pro.
That,
But
even by the time that came around, I don't think that was competitive with specs.
Yeah, that was the flash.
Yeah, the GSM one was close. I mean, and they have HTC to thank for that device anyway.
Yeah.
But I mean, the 700p wasn't. Maybe the one of their other Windows phones, 7WX. But when's the last time we had a properly spec'd modern front-facing QWERTY keyboard device? I can't. It's been forever. And just on the virtue of that alone, I'm interested in giving this thing a shot.
Venue Pro, if the slider is cool.
What's that?
But I mean, the Venue Pro was stuck to your standard Windows Phone 7 specs that were kind of aged by 2010 when Windows Phone 7 came around. I wouldn't call that a flagship high end on the level of, say, a One X or a Galaxy S3 or even an iPhone.
I can't believe any of you are seriously entertaining Dieter's ridiculous notion and giving him the time of day. He should be. Brendan, our producer, should actually drop him from this program right now for saying that. You cannot.
I was going to actually answer Dieter's question with a question, which I forgot, which is fine. But the point I was going to make is that this QWERTY device from RIM doesn't exist yet. So I think actually my question was going to be, do you know that this will compete on specs when it is actually on sale? Which I suspect very much
that's a really
they
good
won't.
point.
I suspect very much
really
they won't. And the perfect example is 1080p displays, right? Because just this week, Sharp announced that it's starting mass production of 1080p 5-inch displays. LG is already doing the same. And Chris and others, myself included, was so incredulous last year when we started seeing 720p displays. And, we just threw up the idea, 1080p displays, that's the next step, right? And we're like, no, dude, we don't need them. And now they're happening. So things are moving so quickly. Like whatever we think of as cutting edge, which RIM is never cutting edge, right? So whatever we think of cutting edge today, by February, March, April, when RIM actually releases, is going to be blunt, to extend the analogy.
I just can't get over the fact that it doesn't look like RIM has iterated on the 9900 design at all. Like it literally just looks like a 9900 that's half an inch longer. Which I mean,
I'm okay with that.
It's an iPhone 5 too, but I mean, it's like. It's exactly the same thing, just with
but the difference, Dan, is that the iPhone is iconic and people have built up loyalty, whereas RIM used to be iconic, and RIM actually needs to change.
Yes.
Look, man, they're going to make a Porsche version of this, a $99.99.99, and it's going to cost $3,000. And I'm not going to buy that one. I can't even make the joke.
No, dude, that actually is dredging up bad memories for me because I spent a solid week reviewing that garbage Porsche design phone and just giving it the time of day, just giving it an honest shot. And it's crazy. It's crazy. It makes me want to strangle somebody. And actually, that's a good point. If you ever buy anything branded by Porsche or Ferrari or Mitsubishi or Lamborghini or anybody, make sure it's the thing that company and brand is famous for. Okay, because I haven't seen anything good.
I'm going to argue this point with you because I want to say, it's got to be like 10 years ago now. There was a line of laptops that actually Best Buy sold that were branded with Porsche design, and they were like the best looking Windows laptops of the time. They pretty much just aped, whatever Apple was doing. But at that point, there was no Windows laptops that had a widescreen display and aluminum chassis and relatively thin design for the time, and they even had like slot loading CD-ROM drives. So those are like the only. I guess that's the exception that proves the rule there. But nobody wants to corroborate this on me or with me.
Yeah, no, sorry, you're way out on your own, man.
I don't even know what you're talking about, but I trust you.
They were like something
if there's a
something.
Batman tie-in, you should totally jump all over that. Like a Batman tie-in, I think you can.
Like the Batman Lumia 800, which was amazing.
Yeah. How about a James Bond tie-in? Isn't the Sony Xperia TL got announced? Isn't that going to be James Bond's next phone?
Yes, yes, and I actually can talk about that because I've had one in for review, and I can't bring myself to review it because, well, frankly, the fact that I'm not going to review it, Sony should thank me for. They should probably like send me a cake and say thank you, because it is annoying. And well, here's the thing. It's ships with ice cream sandwich, which is good, and it's generally responsive. And in terms of the widgets, I actually think Sony might have some of the best skin widgets and little skin tweaks. So it has some really, really good ideas. But Sony's habit of picking the ugliest, most annoying displays. I'm talking, if you're just looking at the display straight up in front of you, like right in front of your eyes, it looks good. And all of this Bravia engine talk that they have with the displays, right, top notch, great. You can get some great saturation, great color, etc. As soon as you tilt it in any sort of direction, and let me assure people, most of the time you're not looking at your phone straight ahead. You know, it's not a 20-inch display. You don't need massive viewing angles, but you need some viewing angles. A lot of the time you're looking at your phone while it's on a table or in your hand, etc., and you're looking at it from one angle. And when you're doing that, these Sony displays are just garbage. And I thought this Xperia T was an upgrade over the Xperia Arc with the plastic back, but Sony's still using the exact same plastic materials. And ultimately, you just starts to feel really cheap. I think it's such a major and significant departure from things like the Xperia X10, which to me was, I think that's what it was called, right? Sony Ericsson Xperia X10. Yeah. The one that was stuck on 1.6 for about a decade, Android 1.6. Yeah. That really felt like a premium device. Like you held it in your hand and you're like, wow, this is a Sony phone, even though the software had issues. Now Sony's getting better with the software. It's just cheapening out on the hardware side. And it's not learning from its own mistakes. And it just annoys me.
Yeah, the issues that you have with the T sound like the exact same issues with the Ion that came here in the US this summer. Yeah. It's just, display issues all over the place, hardware issues with it all over the place. And
just the thing I was going to say is this phone also makes James Bond appear completely confused because he's going to wear an Omega watch, which costs thousands and thousands of pounds or dollars, whatever your currency, it costs thousands, right? It's got precision engineering and it keeps time beautifully, etc., etc. And then just a little bit further down into his hand, you got this plastic piece of, and it's terrible. I mean, it's basically ruined the film for me. As soon as I see the product placement for the Xperia T, I'm going to be like, James Bond uses a garbage phone. I can't even respect him anymore. I want the Russians to win, whoever the bad guys are.
Well, of course you do. You're Bulgarian, Vlad.
Yeah,
you probably root for the Russians in every single Bond movie.
Pretty much.
Even if there aren't Russians in the movie. Wow.
By the way, I have nothing topical to add to this conversation. I haven't played. I will say this. I don't think we've ever mentioned it on the show, but we should. Jeff Blagden did an excellent piece where he actually went and talked to Sony's mobile designers at their Tokyo design office. And in particular, I mean, the text of it is great, obviously, and he interviewed them. But the gallery is really, really fascinating, where you get to see all these different design concepts that they've iterated through. And there's this one shot in particular of this table with, I think, like literally every phone Sony and Sony Ericsson have ever made. And it's just it's insane. I want to buy that table with all the phones on it, just for my own personal use. But yeah, I do think after reading Jeff's piece, I do want to believe that Sony recognizes exactly what you guys are talking about, which is that there's, their recent devices have felt very cheap. Sometimes they look great, but they feel cheap. And I think that as the new management and the new corporate structure kind of congeal over the next few quarters. I'm hopeful that that's going to change. At least I certainly want it to, and I think we all do. We all have, everyone in our age range has a very fond memory of Sony growing up, and we all kind of want to see them turn around. But this product is not necessarily that. And on paper, the specs are great, right? But yeah,
No.
I'm not too hopeful about this phone that I would buy.
They're not even great. That's the thing. I don't know if I've said much positive during this podcast today. I'm just here ragging on companies, but Sony blew it on the spec side as well. It has a Snapdragon S3 from about 2.5 years
This
ago.
is still the S3. That was like one of the biggest complaints with the Ion was that it was the S3 and it was old and crusty and slow.
Scorpion processor.
Oh my god! Yeah, that's totally blowing it.
Yeah, so it's dual core. It's 1.5 gigahertz, but it's old. So that's one part. Another part, going to Chris's point about us hopeful geeks and the way that Sony's letting us all down, PlayStation certification. HTC made sure to mention that the One X Plus is another PlayStation certified device. And then I made sure to mention to HTC, when they were telling me about that, the fact that the PlayStation Store isn't activated yet. So being PlayStation certified basically means 0 for the One X Plus and for the Xperia T. But also, let's not forget that Sony is trying to have its One Sony campaign. So we got the HTC trying to give you the one smartphone device campaign. Sony's trying to be the one Sony. It's also trying to rationalize the product line. And at the same time, they're falling back on bad old habits because you got the Xperia T, which is, I'm guessing, is going to be all across Europe. Then you got the Xperia TX, which is going to be the Germany-only LTE version. And that one actually has a Snapdragon S4, dual-core Snapdragon S4 and LTE, I think. Well, they had to combine the two, basically. So that's why they went for the newer processor there.
I have nothing more to say about Sony. Speaking of depressing Android garbage, the Motorola Atrix 4G, depressing in and of itself? I don't know. It's depressing that it's not going to get upgraded ice cream sandwich. Like, come on, guys. Really? Come on. You said you'd do it. I mean, this is an old phone, and that's fine, whatever. But I don't know, man. I mean, when is Motorola going to get its act together and act like it's owned by Google? I mean, we had the stuff about the Razr and all that. But like, I would just like to see this company have the new Motorola clean break that we're expecting it to have and just do that. And the Razr M and the Razr HD were not it. And, this continued fiasco of, is it going to get an update? Is it not? When's it going to come? Oh, now it's not going to because it's not powerful enough. It just needs to stop. Like
my theory, and I think that we talked about this on the show in the past, but my theory is that they're still kind of cleaning out the pre-Google ownership pipe, and the Razr M is a perfect example of that. I don't think that is a product that the Google-owned Motorola would have necessarily greenlit, but that was a commitment that they had to Verizon prior to that acquisition completing. And of course, the Atrix 4G is a legacy product, and that's probably an example of Motorola just trying to cut its losses and refocus its smaller team. Keep in mind that they're going through some layoffs right now. They're trying to refocus their smaller team, hopefully on new and interesting products. So I don't want to sound like I'm shilling for Motorola here, but I'm cautiously optimistic that we haven't actually seen what a Google-owned Motorola can do yet.
I completely agree. We haven't seen it yet.
This kind of delay reminds me of HP and Palm. It just took so long for HP to quote unquote integrate Palm, get the scale, get the such and such, get the middle management to remember everybody's name, etc. And it never gelled. It never materialized. So I'm just gonna carry on with my negative theme for today and just be like, why? The question has to be, why does it take so freaking long? Like, you bought the company. It took months for Google to get, ratification from Europe, US, even China. So they knew that this was going to happen for a long time. They could have learned everybody's name. They could have learned what everybody does, and they could have adjusted things. I guess maybe I'm being too optimistic about how quickly roadmaps can be changed in this business. Maybe I am, but it still just feels slow as hell, aside from the fact that it's outrageous.
I mean, to be fair, the Atrix 4G was a pretty like issue-prone phone. I briefly tried to own one, but I couldn't do it. But you know, I mean, if you look at it, I guess the bothersome thing to me is that this is a perfect example of a device that you look at the specs on paper, and there's absolutely zero excuse for it not to run ICS. I remember sitting in Motorola's press conference at CES 2011, and they you know introduced this Atrix 4G, and everyone was like, "Holy crap! 1 gig of memory, dual core processor." People were that was the phone that they famously announced alongside the Droid Bionic, which got sent back to the drawing board, and then the Bionic didn't launch until October or something.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is a phone that when it was announced, you know, less than 2 years ago, less than one full contract ago, was far and away the most high spec Android phone to be announced, and here we are in 2012, and this thing has just been left by the wayside.
I guess we should talk about the other, the biggest, you know, fail in mobile of the past couple of weeks. So we got to address Maps again. What's super interesting is Tim Cook published a letter apologizing for Maps, and they have been promoting third-party alternatives in the store. Who among us is using iOS 6 and Maps? I know that I am, and this got mentioned on the Vergecast. I literally got pogued, just like David Pogue. Maps sent me to a random cul-de-sac instead of to my meeting. And if I hadn't shown up super early, I would have missed my meeting. It was completely insane. I went to the address, I stood at the address, and I searched for the address in Palo Alto, and standing right at it. And it gave me the result back at the other place in a different city. And I reported the problem, but I couldn't report the problem on the spot that I was at. So I guess the big question for me is how long until, you know, people feel like this isn't a problem? Will it be a Google Maps or some third-party app that everybody defaults to, or will Apple be able to fix up their Maps product on iOS quickly enough where we won't be complaining about it and feeling frustrated by it?
So I have a thought on that, and I'm probably going to catch a lot of hell for this. But you know, I've been talking to my friends over the past couple weeks since iOS 6 came out, and a lot of them are iPhone users, but they're not techie at all. They don't read what we do, or they're not on the only mention of Maps they might hear on the Today Show or the evening news or something like that. And pretty much every single one of them has said, I don't know what everybody is complaining about with Maps because they're just fine for me. And it's totally anecdotal, but I think that's going to be something that a lot of average users are probably not going to have that big of a problem in, you know, a few weeks' time. Once it blows over the whole storm of complaints and controversy, once that blows over and everybody's kind of focused on the next thing, I don't think average users are really going to have too much of a problem with it in the long run.
I kind of agree with you, Dan, but except for one thing, which is that it only takes one catastrophic incident to really sour you on the experience. And Dieter's example is a perfect you know case of that, where it's like if he had missed his meeting, he would have been pissed for 6 months or more that Maps had wronged him, and I wouldn't blame him for that.
Yeah, I mean that's a very good point. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's going to be a situation for regular users too. 99% of the time, they might get to their destination, but it's that other 1% that's really going to cause long-term problems for Apple, I think, or has the potential to anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a perception thing, and the question is, once you've been burned once, it's sort of in the air that it's a problem, and then you just have that opinion, and you know, it's just going to be hard for Apple to turn that around. I mean, I think I've said before, as a first iteration of Maps, I think it's really good. But first iteration of Maps is not really acceptable anymore.
Right.
Yeah. There was this Wi-Fi issue where you could have Wi-Fi on Verizon and maybe other carriers. It was still using cellular data, but Verizon's not going to charge you for it. I didn't experience this, but I'm not on Verizon either. But it's good that that's getting fixed and relatively quickly, it looks like, too. So yay. I think that's really the big iPhone news of the week, to be honest. Other than
I have
paper
one piece of
failing on me.
I have one piece of big iPhone news, which is that Do Not Disturb is the best feature ever invented. And it really upsets me to say that, because it's like, I remember when they talked about it during the iOS 6 event, I was like, oh, that's awesome. Oh, wait, that's so basic. I shouldn't be saying it's awesome. But in reality, like the programmability of it, it's awesome. It's great. The implementation is perfect. I have like 3 contacts that I allow to get through if it's in Do Not Disturb mode, and I have peace of mind that while I'm on the mobile show,
are you
my phone
scheduling
is not
it
going
or
to
are
ring.
you toggling it?
Am I what? Sorry?
Are you scheduling it or are you toggling it?
Both. So what I do is, like, when the mobile show started, I turned it on. And so that's an example of me manually enabling it. But I'll definitely use it for, like, if I'm going to a movie or something. Instead of putting my phone in silent, I'll put it in Do Not Disturb. And then I also have it set so that between, I think, like 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. or something, it's in Do Not Disturb right now. And that might change. I might adjust that depending on, like, what events are going on, newsy events. But, I figure that's a safe range for me to be able to sleep without any potential text messages from drunk friends.
Well, it's. I know you've mentioned this in the past, Chris, but it's kind of interesting how much granularity iOS gives you over notifications, and Do Not Disturb is a part of that. Excuse me. Where the rest of, like, the OS is, you have very little control over certain things that you might expect to have more control of, but this notifications thing you can, like, go customize to your heart's content, where you can't even do that on some of the other platforms. So it's just kind of this interesting anomaly within iOS.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me about the Do Not Disturb is it's basically profiles. And we had this innovation with the original Trio 180 that, and actually, no, I'm sorry, with the Visor phone. This goes back to the Visor phone that, profiles, that all these phones with these different, like, night mode and Do Not Disturb mode and movie mode and blah, blah, blah mode is really complicated for users. So we're just going to make a physical switch, and that will put it in silent. And that's the most profile management that you need to bother with. And that is carried through to a ton of different phones. The iPhone, of course, a bunch of Android phones, they if you scroll all the way down, it automatically goes to silent. And so profile management has sort of, like, fallen by the wayside as a feature that most people care about and want to manage. And rather than just bring back the idea of profiles and setting up multiple profiles, they just bring one, this Do Not Disturb mode, which maybe gets multiplied by the ringer switch or not. And I guess it makes sense to me to do that because it's still simpler than a full-on support for, customizable profiles. But on the other hand, I figure if you're going to be introducing this sort of complication in the first place, just do it right and do it all out. I mean, you just said there's a ton of settings and granularity in iOS. Like, why not have more?
Well, maybe that's the thing. Maybe Apple has done it right. Maybe it's just give you a little bit, but not the whole thing. Because I fully agree. I've seen so many phones with exactly like you're saying, like silent profile, outdoors in the garden profile, cloudy day profile, and you're like, what exactly is this adjusting? Like, am I switching between the crazy Korean ringtone and the tame European one? Am I going to have a ringtone? Is the phone going to vibrate? It's not predictable. Whereas with Do Not Disturb, you get exactly the predictable thing. You don't get disturbed. And to Chris's point about scheduling, Zen, our London intern, he's been saying that the best feature, hands down, of iOS 6 for him is also Do Not Disturb. So it's kind of notable that 2 of our extremely erudite and intelligent members of the Verge staff, obviously Chris being a celebrity in the mobile business as well, are loving this feature. And it's actually encouraging because some people, myself included, started questioning, Well, hang on. When was the last time that Apple actually did something really innovative and new and kind of as a selling point on the software side? I don't really know. Like Apple did a whole bunch of catching up with notifications, etc., and did quite a few things well, but it never had like this one feature that it did really nicely and really neatly, which has been kind of a hallmark of previous Apple stuff. So that's encouraging to see that this Do Not Disturb thing has been developed in-house by Apple and it's been done right. And it's, getting positive feedback from people. I do feel, I mean, the Nokia N9, coming back to that favorite phone of mine, it also had that kind of thing. You could schedule things like don't give me any alerts from midnight until 8 a.m. or whatever other time, or just disconnect the phone. I believe Sony also has some of these things built into its Android skin. Or if it's not Sony, then it's a friend of mine who had a Sony phone and hacked it with a ROM. I don't remember exactly, but the point is, other companies have also tried to do the same thing. And maybe if Nokia was still selling and pushing the N9, we would see that being successful. But it's good to see Apple doing it, and at least in my opinion, not having used it, going on the basis of what Chris and Zen have said, Apple seems to have struck the right balance here between customization and simplicity.
I rescind my previous comments and acknowledge that Vlad's speaks the truth.
Yay! Success.
I think one more thing we can't not talk about is this that Deutsche Telekom has confirmed that it's in talks to buy MetroPCS. And we've heard rumblings that there'd be more consolidation in the mobile industry. This is obviously an example of that. And I'm trying to decide if I think it's a good fit. And I mean, it's a good fit just strictly from a, they need to increase customer base and size of the business. But I'm a little bit less sold on if it's a good fit in terms of spectrum.
Well, there's a couple different schools of thought on it, and there was some really healthy debate on Twitter today between some really smart people. And the one side says that MetroPCS is a great fit for T-Mobile because it already has an AWS LTE network, and that's what T-Mobile needs to get to, is an AWS LTE network. And then the flip side, the other argument says, yeah, but MetroPCS also runs this CDMA network that it can't really shut off right now, and it's incompatible with T-Mobile's GSM network. So, it'll be interesting to see how it goes. I think that T-Mobile's access to the LTE network is very important with the AWS spectrum, and since it already uses AWS spectrum, and that's what it's planning on rolling out LTE on in the future, I think it's a good thing if this were to happen.
Yeah, I think that that this is a pretty obvious fit. I mean, people have been talking about this as a possible tie-up since before AT&T tried to buy T-Mobile. And MetroPCS has been in discussions on and off for years and years and years with Leap, just the parent company of Cricket. And they've been kind of like flirting with each other for as long as I can remember. So I think that those regionals that are sitting on a lot of spectrum and not particularly many customers, namely MetroPCS and Cricket, are in perpetual danger of being acquired, if danger is the appropriate word. I think this could work. MetroPCS has some LTE markets that T-Mobile could certainly use, and I think that the FCC is probably the FCC and the DOJ are probably both very friendly to a T-Mobile tie-up with a smaller carrier, certainly more so than they were with AT&T. So this is something that they could probably make happen from a regulatory perspective if they wanted to.
So you think it's going to happen? I think it's probably going to happen.
Yeah. I would put the odds at. I mean, if I were a betting man, I would definitely put $1 on this happening.
Wow.
$1 American dollar.
Yes.
Done.
Which is worth loads nowadays, dude. Are you sure you don't want to save up that dollar and maybe invest it in Sharp? Oh, dude, such a segue. I'm feeling pretty good about that. Well, I mean, this is just a very quick mention, again, to pimp out Jeff Blagden's work over in Japan. He got to see Sharp's 5-inch 1080p display in person, and he's thrilled with it. It's extremely pixel dense. It's got over 440 ppi in pixel density, and according to him, it looks great. So check out his post on the site to get some more of his impressions and take a look at a gallery of pictures from that display. Just one thought that crossed my mind with Sharp today was that it's one of, I think, every single Japanese tech company is having some struggles nowadays. I can't think of one that's thriving. Maybe Nikon and Canon, because their business hasn't changed quite as dramatically, even though it is in the process of changing. But Sharp is one of those companies that's struggling. Foxconn has been looking to buy a stake in Sharp and help it out. The Japanese government, I think, approved a bank bailout of some $6 billion for Sharp and Renesas recently. But the thing that came to my mind is Sharp can have a silver lining to its future if it continues to lead in mobile displays. And that seems to be where Sharp is right now, because it's one of the companies providing the iPhone 5 display, which means it's guaranteed to sell as many displays as it can actually produce. And it's now one of the companies on the cutting edge for displays for what we sure to be the next generation of Android devices. So it's in a good position.
Well, on that hopeful note, we're going to end on a hopeful note. I'm making it happen. Thank you very much for listening and or watching the Verge Mobile Show. If you want to follow us, you can. I'm at Backlon. Vlad is at Vlad Savov. Chris is at ZPower. Dan is at DC Seifert. That's with an EI, if you're wondering. We are all at Verge. You can comment on the podcast post when it goes up. We've also got Verge Mobile Show at theverge.com. Actually, it's just mobile show at theverge.com. If you want to email us, that'd be fine too. We appreciate that. We do. And I'm just rambling. We're gonna go. Goodbye. Thanks. Adios.
Thanks, guys.